Welcome to Breaking Big, where we interview people about their careers in the entertainment industry. I'm your host, Erin Newmeyer. Everyone here at Thunder Tally Media is so excited to announce that we are being featured on the Hoo Ha Ha app under the Podcast We Love section. They are on a mission to spotlight and support women in comedy. One of the ways they do that is by amplifying women's voices, like this podcast. If you haven't already, go check out the hoohaha.com website. There's so much great content there. That's where you'll find my podcast and all the other shows featured under the Podcast We Love section. And now I'd like to welcome you to Breaking Big. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our show. I'm Erin Newmeyer, your host. This episode will be broadcasting on camera on our Thunder Tally Media pages and on Facebook and on our YouTube channel. So if you're listening to podcast only mode, you can always go and rewatch these videos there or on Stitcher, which now offers a video option. So let's get started. This is the one with Rachael Thompson. She's a photographer who's worked both as a fine artist and commercially, often as a unit stills photographer for film and TV productions in Southern California. She's got a passion for documenting and understanding the truth of our lived experiences, so it's no surprise she spent 15 years as a journalist, writer, and editor. Her photographs have been published in the New York Times, Entertainment Weekly, People, Hollywood Reporter, LA Yoga, Voyage LA, and on book covers, album covers, billboards, and posters. Lately, she's been experimenting with multimedia and immersive experiences that challenge the status quo on how women are represented in the media. In 2021, she founded Stolen Butter, an online art gallery and store to amplify the voices of fellow artists and bring their art into the world in creative ways that pierce the public consciousness. Welcome to the show, Rachael.
Hi. Thank you so much.
I'm so happy to have you here.
This is crazy. It's really weird for me to be on this side of the camera. So this is really special, though. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, you're doing great so far. So hang in there. So I wanted to ask you how you got started, with photography, and then, when you decided to move from journalism into more like fine art and that type of photography.
I think it's sort of always been it's sort of been an evolution that has happened throughout my life. So like photography, when I was little, I had a little click camera when I was like 9. And I just, ever since I had that camera in my hands, I just fell in love with it. And I also did writing. So for me, it was often a struggle, like which one am I going to do now? And so when I was in college, I studied journalism. I always wanted to be a journalist. I always knew I was going to be a journalist. And even with photography, it's the same. It's photojournalism, mostly street photography, that kind of thing is what I really love, because you're capturing real moments and real people and you're telling real stories. And but it was always a power struggle sort of within me, which one I wanted to do and, what form of what I wanted to do. I always felt sort of an obligation, I guess, to tell stories a certain way, whether it was like with the camera or without the camera. But then also, there's also this balance you need to have because you want to have artistic freedom. And it's hard to have that when you're documenting something for historical purposes. And you want to make sure that it's accurate and that you're telling us, the story as it is unfolding or with the context that you have. But I don't know, it's been a journey. It's sort of, there's many stages and phases to the evolution. I don't even know where to start with that, really. When I moved to California is when I decided to just kind of flip the table and flip careers all the way and just to go the other route. But I think that was more because the universe sort of stepped in and guided me in that direction. I don't even know if that answers your question.
I think this is a good time to kind of show this little demo reel thing that we have for you. I put it together for you using some photos and stuff, so you didn't really get any say in the music choice or anything. But we're gonna play it so that people get a sense of all your skills.
Okay. It's weird to look at it like that. It really is a lot of different
Yeah, there's
kinds of
really a
things.
lot of stuff packed in there.
There is.
Yeah, well, you've done a lot. I think that gives people a good sense of, like you've really covered the gamut. And I mean, and those are all photos from even after were kind of, I'm sure when you were being more of a journalist, you probably were still taking pictures and stuff at that time. So this is even more recent than that. And then we also included in there some of your images of production photography, which is called unit stills photography on set, and also the key art photos. So I was hoping you could maybe explain to people what the difference is between, that type of photography, those two types of photography, unit production photography and key art.
Okay, yes. It's funny because some of those posters, sometimes they make, all right, the difference, let me start over. So unit photography is it's very much like photojournalism. You're on set and you are like a fly on the wall. So you are behind the cameras, your job, 90% of your job is to capture the scenes being filmed in front of you. So it's like every time you see any picture in a newspaper or a publication about a movie and they have a little still photo, that comes from a still photographer. Or anytime, actually flipping through Netflix is really, or anywhere, or Hulu, or flipping through TV on our home TV is an exercise in adventure now, because I often will see my still photos as we're clicking, and it's kind of funny. So they're used for that too, like for thumbnails. They're used on posters. They're used on billboards, but it depends how. Like there's multiple ways that posters and billboards get made. So one of those posters you showed had, it was for Love Daily, and it had a stack of images kind of vertically, stacked on top of each other. And those were, the producers pulled together one still from each episode that they thought represented that episode. It was an anthology, and then made the poster out of those unit stills. So oftentimes you'll see posters with unit stills on them. Other times they'll take those photos and then they'll enhance them with art. So I think the freakish one, that was a photo I had taken on set of Mary, one of the actors. And the whole photo didn't get used, but this part of her eye did, right? With another photo that was like of just the set. So like sometimes they'll combine them. And other times we'll do a whole photo shoot just for the poster and just for the main art, those key art shoots. And those are really fun. That usually involves, like, I'll bring my studio, I'll set up lights and backdrops, and the actors will come in. And with those shoots, there's usually an art plan. Like, so for example, starter pack, that poster on there, Twin My Heart, that was a lot of those posters. When we went in for those, for example, like the whole cast would come in and we would shoot each person. And then, they already had a vision. I already knew a mock-up of what they were trying to create. So it was, it's easier because once you know the idea, you have to work a little closer with the art department to capture what they want in those cases. Or, Guilty Party, they wanted something really dark and moody. It was a mystery, so those shots, like I knew what all the uses were going to be, which makes a big difference. So then you can create the lighting that you need and the whatever other setup you need to make that work. So it can happen a bunch of different ways. It just depends. I like doing both. I enjoy both jobs, but they're very different. One is a lot easier on your schedule. So if you have kids like me, unit photography got really difficult. The schedule became difficult when my daughter was young, and Lucia, and it was hard to not be there very much, and to find out at the last minute. You get your call sheets the night before, so sometimes you're waiting for them at midnight. You're finding out what time you have to be up for work the next morning, and often it's being an hour away at 7 a.m. and getting trying to make sure that your kid has her lunch ready, and it can be a lot, So the key art is nicer with your schedule. So anyway.
So why do they need photographers to take stills when they're rolling video on things? Like, why can't they just do a screen grab of a video footage?
resolution. The resolution of the screen grab will never be as high as a still camera. I mean, not a good still camera anyway. That's the main reason. They do it for thumbnails often. I mean, you'll see it. I mean, when you're I mean, I've worked on things where, oh, you don't have a still of one thing that they want to put there, and sometimes that happens. And if it's for like the internet, they can do a screen grab and it's usually fine. But you can't put a screen grab on a billboard. I mean, without losing the integrity of the image, you may as well just have a nice image. Also because stills often works with marketing departments. So another thing that you're there for, like, so when you're there, 90% of what you're getting is the scene. That's the main art that they want. But sometimes the other 10%, you're getting BTS, you're getting, you know, the director and the actors and cool equipment and, you know, whatever is going on that's interesting, you know, people helping each other or whatever, you know, whatever is interesting backstage. And it can range from any number of things. Sometimes it's just fun photos of people hanging out. But those have been used a lot actually too, even in publications. There was one paper I don't remember who it was, but who wrote about one of our directors on one of the shows I worked on, and they used all the stills with him behind the scenes, and it was cool because you got to see him at work. You know, I don't have as many of those of me because
I'm so cool.
So I know that you were asking for them before this, and I struggled to find them, but every once in a while, people will send them to me too.
Let's show people what you look like holding the blimp.
Oh, the blimp.
And while we show this, tell us what this is.
Well, this was a very long time ago. This is okay. So this is a sound blimp with a Nikon. At that time, this was like 2015 probably. So that was a Nikon D810 and a 70 to 200 millimeter lens. So if you see this lens, this screws off. So you have one part of it. This is a two-piece system here. One holds the body of the camera and one holds the lens. And if you see where my hand is, you actually have to zoom that entire thing. So when you're trying to get a picture to zoom, you're using your whole hand to turn that entire unit, which is heavy. And then meanwhile, my other hand is on a trigger. So you connect it to the camera. And then when you have it, you know, halfway to focus, and then once you get it where you want it in the frame, you know, you push it all the way to take it. It was a challenge to have to adapt to this, to this. And then, you know, when you're not holding it the other way, it's very heavy. So this is often me resting. It's a good bicep workout for sure.
So it's not something you can put on a tripod. You have to hold it the whole time?
No, you cannot. Yes, you have to hold it the whole time. And there's a different attachment for a smaller lens. So the two lenses you mainly, like, you only need 3 lenses on set, really 2. The 24 to 70 is like the best lens, and the 70 to 200, which is actually the one I use mostly for, like, I find that getting the BTS stuff is easier with the wider lens. And then all the scene work, it's usually better with the long lens because you're behind everyone else. So you want to zoom in and have that nice medium shot that they're getting, or whatever the heck they're getting, or that nice close up. But then, and you want a nice shot, but you can't have people in your way. So you have to be far. So you need a long lens. So, you know, it's really,
so how much do you think it costs to get started with all this?
Oh, with that was $2,000. That just the case. And it's infuriating because it's just a Pelican case. Really, if you break it down what it is, and foam, I mean, I could show you the inside, like, they shouldn't cost that much. So I paid $2,000 for that set. That one plus another lens. I had 2 lens tubes. But it's a lot. So now when I upgrade my cameras, I just use the same thing. You don't have to use that though. So when I started, at the time that I started doing unit stills, it was the only way to keep your camera quiet. But now there's mirrorless cameras and they're quiet and they have high resolution and they're great. There's sort of this, you know, a lot of my colleagues have switched their systems. I have not, because I don't do it enough anymore. So I still love my Nikon. I'm a Nikon girl. I also love Fuji. That's my other, if I did switch, I would get the Fuji, like X-T4 probably. But I already have the gear, so and I already know how to use it. So I kind of look at it now when I use it as like I get to go to set to work out. So it's I'm just used to it now. I know it's just second nature for
What
me
else
now.
do you have to bring?
I bring a big, huge camera backpack. I mean, a big one, camera bag. It has 2 bodies. I always bring 2 bodies because if one breaks, and I've had things break, I've had things you can't not have, your gear. So 2 bodies. I bring a 24 to 70, a 70 to 200, and a 50. And I always have those in my kit for set, or actually for anything. I always bring them. Fashion stuff, I add the 85. It's kind of my favorite. Or portraits, I use that one a lot too. But the 24 to 70 is your workhorse, and the 70 to 200, you need those. You can't do that job without those. But the mirrorless cameras and some other lines, Canon makes a lens that's like 24 to 105, which is, nice because it gets you a little closer when you need to be closer, so there are so many, I'm sure everyone sort of has a different range, but you always need a wide, you always need a long, and you always need a nice portrait lens because you never know.
What about computers or other things like a chair or a cart?
Oh, okay. So I have never brought a chair or a cart, probably because sometimes I end up in some really weird spaces, and so there's not room for me to bring chair and a cart. Like the sound team always has their cart, but stills doesn't really have that flexibility. So depending on the set, I like to bring my computer, I'm sorry, and download as I go. Sometimes I can do that. Like on the Target shoot, commercials, it's way easier to do that because they're less intense. Sometimes with like films and TV series, you have so much going on and there's so many pages to get through. And by the way, it's never on time. Like I can count on one hand probably the number of times that a production has like been on time. They're usually commercials. It's almost never shows or films. So, still it's kind of like you kind of have to be quick. You have to get in your spaces and get it. But it helps to set up a table. So usually I'll try to set up a table if I can, out of the way, usually in some dark corner, and then I'll just download cards as I go. It's not always possible though,
Is
depending
there
on what
like
you're
a
doing.
naming convention?
Yes. It's always the same. I mean, I always do it. It's the date, the project, 3 letters, the photographer's initials. So a lot of production companies will have you upload your photos when you're done. Some want them edited. Others just want
Like
you to
before
dump
you
the
leave?
card. I've almost never done that. No, I upload them to different services. Like for example, Hulu uses DF Studio, I think is what that one is. So like, for example, they'll send me a folder, a folder link. I'll upload all my photos in RAW and in JPEG. Those I didn't really edit. Plus they expect at least, so you're shooting. So when you're doing unit stills, you're shooting 800 to 3,000 photos a day. And that's what you're turning in. And so depending on where you are, and it depends, especially if it's a big project. And the bigger production companies, if they have staff who can go through all your photos, they prefer that you just give them everything because then they can, they can do weird crops and they can pull things out for posters or whatever they need to do. They can use it for many different things. But now with so many like smaller production companies, most of my clients want them processed. So it depends. Like in that case, they want me to select them too. So for example, Target, I just did a long shoot with them, and it was like 8 days of shooting, and those I was processing on set as we were going, because it was a lot of content, and we did a lot in 8 days. And so, I had to edit them. I had to select them. They don't want bad ones. They don't want bad ones of talent. They don't want anything that makes their product look bad. So one of the cool things now about those kind of smaller productions is that you actually have more artistic license and more, freedom to choose them, because there's an ongoing joke with like unit photographers that. So when I say, by the way, for a lot of them, I upload everything. I don't mean everything. I do delete. I do a hard delete on some things because some things should not. Because if you include that photo, some intern is going to post it. The worst photo. You could send, 100 amazing photos of the talent for that project or whatever, and they're going to pick the worst one. So I do try to like just X anything I wouldn't want in the world, of me. But it's kind of nice too when you can go through and like I was working with the cinematographer on the Target project, and he's amazing. And I was everything I was doing and processing the images, it looked exactly like what he was filming. So the feel was the same, the tone was the same, and then that way when they use the picture, it completely is flawless with the reel. They're showing.
Do you work with the DP at all when on set? Like, do you guys talk about lens length or the setup or the lighting, color
Yeah,
temperature or anything like that?
sometimes. Yeah. So on this one, on this one, I got to work with, I don't know if you've ever worked with Michael Pessa. He's amazing. He's an amazing DP and an amazing human being. And he likes Nikon. So we had a lot of camera conversations about, I felt so seen. He was really, appreciating my, I have Nikon, that you're a Canon person, right? So like the Canon and the Nikon people, and like,
Yeah.
I feel like really love for my Nikon lenses. And so he shared that with me, and made it really fun. I do not talk with all the DPs on set like that. Sometimes though, I always talk with them to some degree, about what varies. But I always talk to the camera crew though. The first thing I do on a big production is like in a new scene, I go and I look. I look to see what they're shooting, and I talk to them about it because I want my stills to look like the show. So I think that that's a critical thing that every unit photographer kind of needs to do. Make sure your color temp, if they're shooting, and you can see it. You can see what they're doing. It's easy. You can talk to them if they're going to add a filter later. It helps to know that, because then to give it a tone. Because a lot of those production companies, for example,
Yeah,
they want
that's
the
what I
photos.
wondered, because a lot of these things shoot flat, like a like a Vlog or S-Log or whatever, and that kind of desaturates everything. So then you need to know what lookup table they're going to apply to the film after.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, I usually
which
talk
is
to the
lookup
camera crew.
table is a fancy word for filter.
Yeah, but that's really true, because otherwise, look, you can shoot anything anyway, right? There's a million ways to do things. So, you want to make sure that the project is cohesive, that the photos look like the actual movie. Anyway.
Mm-hmm. So, do you own your photos?
Oh, no, not those. So, unit photographers, you sign away all your rights. Commercial photos I own, and I license them usually. I don't usually sell. And portraits I own, and I license them for uses. But unit stills, that's one of the downsides. You kind of, and this is a lot of photographers. This is like it's hard in the chest. It's like you're giving away your work. But the thing is, in that context, it's not entirely your work. Like, it is your work, but you're also there for, someone else's work. And actually, it's a lot of different people's work. There's so many people that make film possible. So many people in the crew that really, I'm okay with it. I'm okay. Like, it's okay.
Yeah,
It's just
your
sort of
work
a
is
thing.
really documenting the work of every department.
Right. And also, right. And the actual thing itself too. Right. So it's, there have been times actually that like I've had my shots have the camera departments have changed their shots based on what was taking on my stills, where they're like, oh, she's got a better angle, or, oh, that's a better, and then they would actually reset camera to go where I was, and, so I do feel that it's very much a shared communal artistic experience making a film. Obviously, you have writers who've worked on it for years, and then by the time you have the set people, the decorators come in and building sets and costumes, bringing it all to life. You can't do anything without, you need all the pieces, so yes, you do give up the rights to your photos, but I almost feel like they should have it should go with the project. So as an artist, it's okay. I'm not going to sell those photos.
What's the craziest project you've ever worked on?
Craziest project, like a film, TV, like a unit.
Well,
those
I'm
projects?
setting you up for that, for that freakish, stills we made.
Uh-huh.
So we can
Um,
show the photo.
Actually, that might have been there were 2 projects that were really intense. One of them was, Freakish was crazy. So I don't know, well, I don't know if you saw it, but it's a series on Hulu, post-apocalyptic series with teenagers. And, so the outside of this world had to be, whenever they filmed anything that showed outside. And actually, oh, okay, here. So in here, you can actually see the outside, a scene happening outside with all the smoke. The smoke machines, they had smoke everywhere and ash. And actually, I don't know if the ash is showing in one of those photos, but like it was raining ash all the time because that's what this world was. It was like yellow light outside and big, thick black ash. And I would come home filthy, filthy, filthy from that show. I mean, it would be in my bra, and it didn't even matter if I had jackets and hoods and layers on, but sometimes it was so hot you were dying, but covered in it. And then the smoke, which by the way makes it really hard. So to shoot through smoke and ash, I don't even know. Um, it's definitely that was a challenge with a blimp. That was a fun challenge, but mostly the heat. So that show, one of the seasons we filmed on the rooftop of a school in Van Nuys, and it was summer. It was 120 degrees that summer, and it was brutal. I mean, like it was brutal, brutal. And we were all outside on the rooftop, and the medics had everybody was getting heat stroke. Like we were trying to keep it together. Like we made it through there, and there were some people who we all had to take breaks, extended breaks at times, like salt tablets. The medics were bringing us salt tablets and salt. I mean, it was insane. It was insane how we made it through that, honestly, because we were outside on a rooftop in the sun with all this other stuff on top of it, in this weather. And like that's the thing. Like they put up tents and you try, and they actually had. I have photos from that day where there were PAs following talent around. Each talent had like 2 PAs manning them. That's how hot it was. It was really crazy. And then also in that show, I often had to be in really crazy places. So like you're crouching down under a cam where like there's a window shot, but it's like a really amazing shot. I have to get this shot of whatever it was, the importance was critical. So like you're, maybe squatting for an hour. Like, do you know, with the blimp in your hand, trying to shoot through smoke. Like,
Wow.
it was definitely challenging. I mean, I really loved it though. Actually, talking about it, I kind of really loved that part.
Well, I wanted to contrast your experience on that kind of a set with like a commercial studio set. So we're going to show your pictures from one of your more recent commercial jobs.
Yes, that one had much less crouching. Actually, I don't even know that. I don't even think I had to crouch that much on that set at all. Maybe a couple of times, but not a lot. And so that set and those 2 photos, it changed. So this one here, you can see it's a kitchen. So we were shooting, I think that was a kitchen in that one. We were shooting cooking scenes. And then in the other one, I think it was at the end, those were I think the fashion segment. So this was commercials tend to be much more organized, and not organized. Well, they tend to run really tight because there's usually a very clear point, right? Your marketing. So this campaign was Target Takes On. It's a really fun campaign where they brought in a bunch of different influencers and content creators who specialize in different things. Like one, makes food, and one does beauty and fashion. One does home DIY stuff. Anyway, so they filmed them all using different Target products with different setups. And so that one set was it was transformed 4 different times into 4 completely different spaces in a very short, time. So that's really fun, to get to see the evolution and transformation of.
And then I wanted to talk a little bit about, I feel like you said, the on-set photography or the on-location, studio and maybe sometimes outside photography is so much different than when you're doing the key art photography. So I wanted to show a picture of some of your key art samples and then have you talk a little bit about what the difference is there.
Okay. Yep, that one's well, so okay, so one of those, so actually these were all done very differently. So the Twin My Heart, that was I shot that in studio with the Merrill twins, and we did a white backdrop, and we did a bunch of different setups for their show. And I kind of had I sort of knew that the poster art, they did several different posters of this, and but I sort of had a mock-up from the designers of what they wanted. So the images in the back of that one I did not take, but the ones of the twins I did take that. And then they were going to superimpose it over these other, it's like a dating, I don't know, what things that are relevant to the show. The Light as a Feather, that's a book cover. And it was also a poster and a billboard. The Light as a Feather, that one was shot, that's a unit still, actually. And that show, that was another crazy show. We filmed overnight in cemeteries a lot. So my schedule was insane when we shot that. I was working overnight and coming home at 8 a.m. when my daughter was going to school and leaving for work when she was coming home. And that unit still, that scene in the cemetery, one of the seances, that was crazy. Like we actually did. So you can't see it in the photo, but she was being held up by chains. So, and there was a big crane. It was really amazing. And of course we just took the, chains out of the shot. But it's really amazing how that was actually made. There's no Photoshop in that other than removing the chains. Otherwise, that photo is how it was set up and how it was taken. And The More Things Change, that's a trans film that I got to do the key art for. And that was shot in downtown LA. And that film is amazing. It's a short film and the story is amazing. Like, I just loved it. It's really fun and it's smart and it's... The actors were amazing. And so we shot that key art in downtown LA. It's very representative of the story where this parking, what do you call that? That was very important to her story. I don't want to give it away, but that was a really fun project to work on. History of Lying was shot in studio. Starter Pack was also shot in studio. With different lighting styles. So one of them, the History of Lying, we went for a moody look because it's a mystery, right? And so Starter Pack, it was a little more colorful, light, bright, funny. It's a comedy. So it was, had totally different lighting for that one. And then Love Daily is what the one I was telling you about. They pulled different unit stills from all the different episodes and then made a poster out of it, which I had no idea they were going to do, but I love it.
These are so cool. It must be so amazing to see your work out there like that. What would you recommend somebody that wants to get started in this field? What are like the first steps?
For unit photography? For me, my first steps were a little different. I kind of fell into it. Accidentally and sort of, but it's very much like journalism. So I will say anybody who's doing photojournalism now who might be rethinking path forward, because a lot of journalists have a hard time kind of making that leap. This is actually not a big leap from journalism, and because you're doing the same. You're in the background. You're not you're trying not to influence the story. You're capturing what you see. Getting jobs in the industry though is not easy all the time. Like I think definitely if you really seriously want to do this, you have to join the union, the camera union. I was going to do it. I never actually did it because I had all my hours and I was accumulating them. And then by the time I was finally my friend made the leap. You can still work without doing it. I decided not to go that route because I decided to then go this other route that I sort of wanted to pursue with that money that I would have spent. But I definitely recommend joining the union. I've worked on most of my shows are union. And
is it very expensive to join?
It is very expensive to join. It's like $10,000. So for me, it was a challenge. And that's why, I really wanted to be sure before I did it that was what I wanted. And then I decided I don't know that it was worth that investment because that's a lot, It's a lot for me. So I didn't do that. But also with unit stills, it doesn't always matter. So in order to join the union, though, this is the catch-22. You have to already have experience. So you can't, you can start on anything. Start small. Start on your friend's college film project. That's my recommendation. Start on your friend wants to make a movie for fun. Go do that. Go do it for free. If you have no experience, get experience. I worked on a short film very early on. Nobody got paid on that film. It was a passion project about a girl with autism. And it was a really amazing project. And it was the first time I had really worked on a movie or actually with a sound blimp. Not that one. I had to rent one for that. But it was really great. And it gave me important experience. So I fell into it because a neighbor of ours, a neighbor of mine had seen some of my other work. And she's like, she was a showrunner for Project Runway and a couple other shows. And then she's like, oh my God, you should come work on my show. So I went and worked on one of her shows. And at the same time, I had an opportunity to work on this movie. So I did it. And I did get paid to work on her show. It was legit, but it definitely like interested me. So then I kept looking for projects. In the beginning, they were not all in the beginning, they paid terrible. The money was nothing. Like, I mean, I worked for some pretty low rates, but I wanted to get experience, to move forward. So I did that. And then eventually you get enough experience and then better and better, the jobs are better. I do think some things, unit photography is difficult in that way because sometimes you're hired through the production and sometimes you're hired through the marketing department. So there's two different ways to get those jobs. When you're in the union, you'll get them through the production. But even when you're in the union, you can also get them through the marketing department. So marketing departments are typically who hire you often, but I don't know. It happens both. You can be hired both ways. So I just suggest if you have friends or if you know anybody who's working on stuff, just go jump in and start, try it out. See if you even like it. If your friend's making a movie, hey, let me go take your stills. You might not like that job because also if you talk a lot, which I do, it's very hard. You cannot talk on set. So, you have to be quiet. And, I mean, I had a lot of training to know how to do that.
So it's an introvert's job.
Kind of. Well, so my friend Alex, he hates talking to people. And so he loves that. Like he joined the union, like he ended up moving forward and pursuing that route. I still love to do those jobs and I get to do them sometimes, but yeah, I would say start and, maybe finding line producers. Once you get to work with like good line producers, if you're lucky, like I've worked with, there's one line producer who I love so much. I worked with her back in the day for the low wage gigs, and I showed up for those gigs. And that's the other thing, show up. That's the whole game. Show up and do your best. Because I worked with this woman for years. She was calling me and she's like, I'm sorry that it's like the pay is so bad, but I needed the money anyway. So I was just like racking up. I mean, I worked every day for there were like 5 years where I think I worked every single day. Like, just because, when you're not getting paid a lot, you have to work more, so, but when she moved on, to bigger and better things, she calls me, and so as she's moved, we've worked together for several different networks and the jobs have got, the pay is good now when she calls me, it's like well-paying jobs. So so you never know, show up and then
That's so great. So you said that you decided not to join the union because you wanted to start another project. So I'm wondering if that other project is Stolen Butter.
Well, yes and no. Yes, it became Stolen Butter. It became Stolen Butter, but I didn't know it was going to be that. Like, I really was every year checking my hours, like in Entertainment Partners. I'm like, okay, I still have my hours. I can still do it, because you build them up and I had them. And no, it just, there's a lot of, so I like to do a lot of things. This is the other thing that I want to say about photography in this industry that's really important that I may not have mentioned, but you were showing earlier all the different kinds of work that I've done. And I cannot tell you how many times I've been told that I do too many different kinds of work. Okay, so that it's too much diversity in my portfolio. That I need to only stick to one thing, and I need to only have one style, and I need to only. And this applies for everything from commercial jobs or commercial work to fine art work. And I reject all of that because of what you were asking. I think. What did you ask me? I totally lost track, but I was trying to tell you something important and I forgot. I forgot where I was. I'm sorry, this happens.
I asked if you were, if the reason you didn't join the union was because you wanted to start Stolen Butter.
Yeah. So I think I've always had a conflict with what I wanted to do with photography. And I think there were a lot of different things I wanted to do. I enjoy the commercial stuff. I enjoy the fashion shoots and the commercial shoots because I get to work with the designers and the people who make these things and help tell their story. And I love portraits because you're telling someone else's story. And I love unit stills because it can be fun sometimes, but I don't want to do it all the time because the schedule is impossible. I love all the different things. So I kind of wanted to explore more of those things. I first started exploring the more commercial photography, and that was really fun. And then the art thing. So Stolen Butter started during the pandemic. I had been trying to find a path forward with fine art and I didn't know how. So 9, 10 years ago, I went. So Bergamot Station, I used to go, I'm sure like everybody else in town. I went to an art gallery and I paid like $100 for a ticket from this gallerist to talk about how to break into fine art photography. And so I'm like, okay, great. I'm going to go. I'm going to learn from this guy. I brought my notebook. I made notes. I still have those notes, actually. And I have to tell you that it was a really depressing experience because the guy, so I'm asking questions and the guy responds to one of them and he says, "Are you a commercial photographer?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, oh, you're never going to make it in fine art photography. You can't do fine art photography. And I was like, what? What do you mean? So I can use my skills to make art, but I can't use them to pay my rent, which made no sense to me at all. So how are you supposed to survive if you can't, do paid work? It doesn't make sense. So it really stopped me from pursuing that. Like it honestly, and meanwhile, I had another friend who had used to run an agency, right? So I was doing, I've been doing a lot of commercial work. I've done stuff for Macy's and iHeartRadio and Target, like big companies. But somehow then I would get this critique from, my friend who used to own an agency, like, oh, well, I mean, because I have more than 3 photos on my website that show more than one style of things, like I'm not exclusive. Like it's, the expectations for what you are and are not allowed to do as a photographer is stunning because so I can use it to make art, but only if I'm not getting paid for it. And I can't use it and then therefore you're telling me that because I'm getting paid for it, I'm disqualified from also being an artist. Like, I don't understand. So during the pandemic.
I know what you mean though, because when I was doing my photography more exclusively, I had 3 completely different websites. I had a wedding photography website, I had a portrait photography website, and then I had a actor's headshot photography website. And I never even made an events like an other events photography website. I just did that by word of mouth. And it's so crazy to me because if people get so easily confused if they go to your website and then they're like, I don't know what to hire her for. It's like, I feel like people are smarter than that. And having all of your work up there just shows how incredibly talented you are and how versatile you are.
It's exactly the advice though. So my website, which by the way, has not been updated in 2 years. I preparing for this interview, I realized I now need to update it with some newer work, but my website has become kind of like all the advice has been to make it the opposite of what it is, but then things would happen. All of my work is through word of mouth. Still, all of it has been, and I'm so grateful for that. But if people want to hire you for dance portraits, they need to see dance portraits. If people want to hire you for unit stills, they need to see that. If they want to hire you for events, look, I enjoy doing different kinds of work. I enjoy sometimes shooting up and shooting a party. You know what I mean? Like I sometimes like that. Like I like to do different things. I get bored. So it's fun and it's challenging. And also you're documenting different experiences and different types of life, different. I wouldn't want to do the same thing all the time. That sounds, suffocating. So the gallerist who gave me that
Well,
bad
let's get
advice.
back to Stolen Butter real quick. I wanted to show a picture of your website.
Okay.
So, and just tell people a little bit about what Stolen Butter is, because we're starting to wind down here.
Okay. Stolen Butter. So during the pandemic, like all of us, I was sitting in here, and I don't know if you can see this wall behind me. But it sort of saved my life. This wall behind me, and another one we put up of my photos, my own photos. And initially, they were printed on my computer, actually, until I ordered proper prints and filled them. But I realized, like during the pandemic, a friend of mine who she kept people would come and try to buy these off my wall. So that's the first thing. My friends, just my friends, friends would come for dinner and like, can I buy that? And I was like, what? Like, and then during the pandemic, a friend of mine convinced me, she's like, look, you have to start selling your art. And, I always had this complex, right? Like, I'm not a real artist. Like, I'm not an artist. I didn't go to art school. I didn't. I mean, I did study photography in college. I mean, but I never thought of myself as an artist, really. And my husband for 20 years has been telling me I'm an artist. And I'm like, I was a journalist. I was like very much about facts and, things being right. But actually, I realized during the pandemic, oh my God, like I am. And you know what? I don't care what that guy said at that gallery. He doesn't. By the way, I still get emails from that gallery. They never feature women. It's always men. I still get the emails. I still get them. And, I don't need him. So part of it was, you know what? Oh my God, I'm just, why not just try this? Why not just put it out there? Another friend of mine told me, look, you have to give people the opportunity to discover your work. So during the pandemic, I started going through all of my work, like hard critiquing it, maybe re-editing, going through, looking at it like, okay, if I was going to do this, I have to have it, how am I going to show it to people? So I had to organize it into series or collections and, add titles, things I hadn't even contemplated. And that process was really fun. And it was really amazing. It was also very difficult. It's like when I was in journalism, they would say, editing yourself, killing your babies is what they would say. Because you're like, all your words that you're so close to. It's the same with photos. But I had help. I would ask, honestly, I asked friends anybody I saw lately, hey, what do you think of this? And I'd ask if they were here for anything, what's your opinion? And it helped me to feel more comfortable with that. And then we took a trip home to Florida in 2021. And we spent some time with family who we hadn't seen in a couple of years. And I had already been thinking about this idea. I already had the name I already had a lot of things. But we saw one of our friends who's an amazing artist. And we've been friends for 25 years. And he's known my husband for probably 30. And he said something, he had his 2 young kids born during the pandemic, by the way, like, life was hard. He's an art teacher. And he said something, he's like, I just want to make art. Like, you can see this moment where like, life is so hard, right? We're all struggling. We have families and we have other responsibilities. And that minute is when I decided that I had to open the gallery. So before it was sort of like me trying to get comfortable with putting myself out there. But then after that trip home, I came home, I got off the plane and I registered my LLC that day because it wasn't about me anymore.
Wow,
like it wasn't about
that's
me.
So amazing.
And that's why, like, it can't.
Yeah, sometimes I think you just need that, like, inciting incident, as they say in the film industry. And so now, Stolen Butter's a website where you feature not only your work, but the work of other artists. And I believe you're like still building it up and adding more artwork. And then I think you did a pop-up store in January, and you can buy prints off of the website. And I know you can do like metal print, like it's really cool. And I just think it's so exciting because you've had so many different iterations in your like photographic life, and it's still not over. Like you're still experimenting and reinventing. And I love that so much. So while we're wrapping up here, I wanted to know if there was anyone you wanted to do a quick shout out for. We have just like a couple minutes left. So if there was anybody that you wanted to, mention and kind of give a little thank you to, or a mentor or something.
I do. Okay, first of all, I do. There's a couple of, okay, so many women. I mean, honestly, I think moving forward, you guys, women, we have to help each other. That's it. That's it. Because we need to have conversations that are hard. We need to not be afraid to help each other. Like, I really feel like my friend Ita, hi Ita, I love you so much. I'm going to send you a link to this. She's really helped me and helped inspire me to not be afraid of myself. Honestly, I think I spent so much of my life being afraid of myself, and I think so many women in professional environments feel that way. We have had to learn, especially women of a certain age, we've had to learn how to coexist and survive in these ecosystems that are not always designed for us to thrive. And my friend Ita, we met in Miami more than 20 years ago. She's currently living, she was in San Francisco for a while. She's currently in Mexico City. She's Venezuelan. She was a journalist who became an artist who now has an amazing fashion line. And she's always reinventing herself, always testing her limits. And I think that having friends like that, having friends to encourage you to be bold, having friends who are being bold themselves and doing things, that's important, because it's important to surround yourself with people who can inspire you, but also support you, and also have honest conversations. Like, the best advice she ever gave me was never let people call you crazy. Never let anyone call you crazy. And, she said it, of course, in response to me, like, saying, because I'm so crazy. And honestly, she's right. She's like, that's their way of taking away your power. And I think, it's those little things, like, throughout my friendship with her, I feel like she has really helped me to not be so afraid of myself and my dreams, And so anyway, that's one. The second one, I do want to say, if you are a woman who, I don't care if you're on your first career or your third, or maybe you haven't even started down whatever path you're still exploring. I watched this masterclass that was amazing. Do not let her fabulousness fool you. Elaine Welteroth gave the best masterclass for the time that I was in, and it's all things right? Your passions and your talents and your skills. But it was really important the way she presented this idea that you're not done yet. Like, you may have gotten derailed having babies. Maybe, maybe your acting career or whatever career got sidelined because you got married and had a family, because we all know that what happens to women, right? You stop working for a few years and it's like, oh, you're not hireable anymore because you weren't in the workforce for those 3 years. It's insane. She reminded me, oh, but you're picking up all these other tools and you're putting them in your tool belt along your life journey. And so now, nobody's journey is the same. You can make it whatever you want to be. So I don't know, it inspired me and it was very helpful to me. So I highly recommend designing your careers.
I love that. I love that so much. I know I mentioned my little shout out last week was this film that I was so lucky to get to watch through Women in Media's free screening, that had a panel of the very talented, director and producer. And also on the panel was someone that was in the film, she's a filmmaker. Her name is Catherine Hardwick. And I loved her because she directed the first Twilight movie, but she also made a pretty disturbing movie called 13, which I have to admit I haven't watched because I sometimes
I
can't deal
couldn't
with
watch
that kind of like real.
watch it. I read all the reviews. Like, I really wanted to be able to watch it.
Yeah.
And no, actually, wait, 13 I did watch. No, I saw 13. Actually, it was a different one.
Did you? Was it too disturbing for me?
No, but it was intense. But actually, I think the conversations have gotten even more. I think it was a good.
Well, I have a 14-year-old right now, so I don't know if it would be traumatizing to watch it now. But anyway, I wanted to just say how much I love her because, she just had a lot of really good things to say, and kind of to tag on to what you were talking about with, Elaine Weltroth's masterclass is, she's kind of always pushing and reinventing herself. And she's very clear about what she believes in. And she's, I love that she stands up and says those things out loud. And it's so important. And I think, if anybody hasn't seen this film, which I don't think many people have because it just came out, but it's on a bunch of the streaming services. It's called Brainwashed. And I think it's Sex Camera Power. It's really amazing. Anybody should really watch it, but especially women in the entertainment industry, I think it gives us some of our power back when we can really see things for what they are, and then use that information to make decisions about how we want to present our work. So I just want to just shout out Catherine Hardwick for being on that panel. It was amazing, and I loved it. And so to wrap up our show, I just wanted to say, if you want to keep in touch with Rachael. Well, first of all, I'll put all the links in the show notes, but you can follow her on Instagram at Rachael Thompson Photo. And then you can also check out Stolen Butter, and the website is stolenbutter.com, or on Instagram at Stolen Butter. I'm just so happy to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope, any of this was helpful. I really think the most important thing is that, your journey can be whatever you want it to be. There doesn't have to be limits for what we do, and so look at you. You're the best example. I don't know if your listeners know what an amazing photographer you are, but by the way, guys, if you have not, Erin is an amazing photographer. You're amazing. You have so many talents. And I think that you're a really good example too, of like, I love that you're always just moving, you're always doing things, you're always doing projects, you're always writing and creating, and I think it's amazing. And you're like,
thank you.
You're one of my heroes too. I want you to know,
Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. I adore you, and I'm so glad you're on the show today.
Oh, well, thank you.
Well, that's our show. We hope you loved it. If you did, make sure you're subscribed, tell your friends about it, and why not write us a review? If you know someone that would make a great guest on our show, drop us a line. You can find us on Instagram at ThunderTally, or go to our website, thundertally.com. This show was produced by Bex Francis, edited by me, Erin Neumeyer. The music was performed and written by Dylan Neumeyer. And our sponsor is Filmcraft LA, so make sure you go check them out. This has been a Thunder Tally Media production.